Our family immigrated from England in the 1800s due to religious persecution. They first settled in New York and then moved later to Iowa. Your great-grandparents received 320 acres in Wyoming under the Homestead Act of 1862.
When my grandparents moved to Wyoming in 1912, they brought everything they owned on the Transcontinental Railroad system. They were allowed to bring 2 adults, 2 children, 2 horses, 2 cows, 2 pigs, and 2 dozen chickens on the train with them. At the homestead, lumber and materials were bought at the general store in Chugwater, which sold hardware supplies, food, and work clothes. Then they were hauled to the homestead sites by team and wagon. Posts for fences and firewood for both heating and cooking were hauled up from surrounding canyons.
This is your great-grandmother, Susie Hedrick Jackson. She was a nurse. This is your grandfather, Grant. He graduated from college, and after he homesteaded, he became a rancher and a farmer.
My grandmother moved to California in the 1940s, just as World War II was starting. Their family moved to California for the climate due to the illness of her father, Grant Jackson, who is my great-grandfather. My grandfather served in World War II. When he came home, my mom was born, so she's a baby boomer. Now I live in California with my mom and my family. My daughter is a 3rd-generation native Californian. I think it's a really interesting activity to see how my family's history ties into U.S. and world history. In particular, I liked seeing how my grandparents fled England due to religious persecution, and how they landed in one of the first colonies in New York, and then later moved to Iowa, and then made use of the Homesteaders Act and also of the Transcontinental Railroad. I think it's interesting that my mom was born after my great-grandfather came home from from World War II, and so she was born as part of the baby boomer generation. I think for students, it's really important for them to be able to make personal connections to U.S. history, and I think that will be important in my teaching going forward.